Hi, my guest today is Olympic gold medalist Michelle Carter. Welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, Michelle.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you, Michelle. I am so excited to dig into your career, all the great work that you're doing out of sport as well. For my audience, let's set this up a little bit, Michelle. So you are a
Yeah,
three-time Olympian, gold
yes.
medalist in 2016, the American record holder in the women's shot put. You set that in 2016. You became the first U.S. woman to win this event in the history of the competition, which began in 1948. An
Yeah.
incredible story, Michelle.
Well, thank you. Yes. Well, all you said is true.
All that I said is true. So I
Yes.
want to go back. I want to go back a little bit, though, Michelle, from
Okay.
2016. So you win the gold in Rio de Janeiro in 2016, but you had competed in two Olympic Games prior. So
Yes.
your first Olympics in Beijing, you finished 13th in your event. The
Yes.
next Olympics in London, you finish fourth, and then you win the
Yes.
gold in Rio. Talk about that period of time and how you went about after each Olympic Games getting better. It seems every time.
Yeah. Yeah, so I know everybody knows that the Olympic years is every 4 years, and I didn't really plan for 4 years. I just planned for the next year. And the whole idea is just to get better every year, is to build on top of the previous year. So in 2000, was it 2008 was my first Olympic Games, and I finished 13th. And I'm like, you know what? I think I can do this again. And actually, originally in 2012, I actually finished sixth. And there was a couple of drug tests that came back positive. One came back positive the very next day. Another one came back positive 4 years later that moved me up to fourth place, right? So with that, it was like, I was happy that that happened because it lets me know that I was better than what I thought I was because I've been doing the work the right way. But each year, I just kind of like, hey, this is what I did last year. I have to start like close to where I finished so that I can finish a little further every single year. So it's almost like I was laying down a new foundation with the previous year for the next year so that I can just keep improving.
So Michelle, so then take me through at the end of an Olympic Games. Do you like the next day start training again, or do you take some time to recover and refresh? How does that work?
Well, actually, for track and field, our season doesn't end at the Olympic Games. We still have a track season to finish beyond the Olympic Games. So in 2016, after I won, normally what would happen, I will leave the Olympics and go to Europe and compete. But I was able to go home for 3 days to drop off my bags and all my stuff. And then I had to fly back over to Europe to finish out my season. So then we finished our track season around early September, and then I take time off until November, then I'm back training again.
So what's the biggest thing that you learned in the first Olympic Games that you were able to apply for the training going forward to the second Olympic Games?
Yeah, so what I learned in my first Olympic Games that I was actually capable of competing at that level. Because you get there, it's an overwhelming feeling to be at the Olympic Games. Like you're there with the world's best athletes, and you're trying to figure out your place. Like, do I belong here? Is it something I really want to continue to do? But then when I got there, I'm like, this is actually okay. I can do this. I want to do this, and just trying to figure out. How to make myself better because I wasn't sure if this is what I wanted to do, and maybe I would have got there and I would have been like really nervous or really scared and probably never wanted to go to another Olympic Games, but that wasn't the case. I absolutely loved it and I definitely wanted to do it again. So that was kind of like, okay, let's see how far I can actually go with this in 2008. In 2012 was a little different because I was actually very pleased with my original sixth place when I finished that day because I had a lot of going on. 2 years prior, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease and was having some health issues. And so, like, my sixth place to me at that time was like a gold medal from all I had to really fight through. And so I was like, well, if I know that I'm sick and I can get better, and if I'm better by 2016, what could happen then? So it wasn't really like any hard lessons. It was more for me. I feel like it was like a inside growing of myself and just kind of trusting myself and learning myself along the way. Because I each year. brought its own obstacles, and I had to push myself outside my comfort zone constantly to get better.
It's so interesting. You brought up a great point there, Michelle, right? That the definition of success, each individual has a right to determine what success means to them. And for you in that instance, you said that sixth place finish, given what you were going through at the time, felt like a gold medal to you. Talk about that for a minute.
Yes, because I know we all want to win, but sometimes we have to look at our circumstances, and life happens, and where you end up is where you end up. It doesn't always mean that you was a failure. That just means it wasn't for you today, right? And so I didn't look at that sixth place as if I failed, but I knew that I had to overcome a lot to even have this opportunity. And I was grateful for the opportunity because now I was able to prove to myself that I can fight through hard times. And so we don't want to really measure success off of the things that we get and then the things that we accomplish, but look at the personal milestones that you make along the way, or the personal improvements, or the character you build along the way. That's the real prize in success, is who you become in the process while trying to be your best.
So who you become in the process while trying to be your best. What a perspective there, Michelle. One of the things that, and you and I have talked about this before, but one of the things that interests me and fascinates me about individual sport versus team sport is that it truly is, like you said, it's all about you, and it's incumbent upon you to set a game plan, to stick to the game plan, finesse the game plan. Talk about your experience and maybe some of the challenges of being in an individual sport, for lack of a better term.
Yes. The crazy thing is when people actually say it, I'm like, oh yeah, I am an individual sport because I'm so used to that. I'm used to this. Even though I came through the high school system and the college system, I had more of a team system in college. But even in college, I was the only thrower. So I was still kind of like on my own trying to figure things out. But because I have my coach, which is my dad, and I had like different people around me, I still had a team, but I realized that my team can only do so much for me. I still have to put in the time, put in the effort. I still have to drive the car, right? But I have some passengers that kind of make the ride better.
Some passengers that make the ride better. Lots of people around you that support you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a second. So work ethic and the drive to be your best, to persist through adversity and accomplish your goals. Do you think that your work ethic is something that you were born with, or something that you've developed?
I think it's definitely something that I developed. I do think that some people, it might be easier for them with how they're born, but what's around you can definitely help shape and build up your work ethic. And I know with my parents, they're like, if you're going to do this, you got to give it your all. You have to do it this kind of way. So they kind of let us know, like, your effort matters. Finishing what you start matters. If you're going to do it well, that matters. And so I do think that that's something that I was taught and I learned along the way. But as I kind of figured out what I needed to do for myself to be successful, then I didn't really depend on others to really tell me how to work. I started to figure out how I needed to work for myself.
How did you do that? How did you figure out how you needed to work?
It's trial and error, and you have to be honest with yourself. I think a lot of times we are looking to duplicate what others have done, but there's no one on the earth like you. You're rare, you're different. There's no one like you. So how someone else was successful is not going to be how the next person becomes successful. And I think too many times people get caught up on like, well, it worked for them, it should work for me, but you're not them. You don't have the same experiences. You don't have the same whatever they have. And so when you really take inventory of who you are and what's around you and your resources and what you can use, what you have and what you don't have, that's when you can really figure out what's going to work for you and what you need.
Michelle, you've been very public about your diagnosis as a child with dyslexia and ADHD.
Yes.
How did some of that experience and maybe the adversity that you faced as a child with that experience and continue to maybe face, how has that impacted you as a thrower and the work you do to prepare for the Olympic Games and your competitive sport?
Yeah, so it's rough sometimes because my mind works different, but that's a blessing at the same time because I can see something different. And so sometimes when people are like, "Oh, this is how this is supposed to go," I'm like, "But you can also do it like this." Right? So I have the ability to be extra creative and I appreciate that. But it's gotten me in trouble sometimes because sometimes the teachers may have thought I was being smart when I really was like, but no, but I see it so differently than you, and I don't understand why I'm wrong, but it still works, right? So so I had those issues, but one thing too, my parents were very encouraging, letting me know that me having ADHD and dyslexia was not a deficiency, right? It didn't take away from me. I just learned different. I may have to work harder, but I was just as capable of anybody else. I just had to do things differently. And so knowing that when I have bad days, because if you're tired with ADHD, you feel it. It's harder to focus. If I eat too much sugar or caffeine, I feel it. So I know these things about myself and I'm able to manage so that I can at least perform my best. And if I need a break, I just take a break. It's just really getting to know yourself and knowing what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And I've learned that over time. And I didn't care what other people thought. I really didn't. And I got that from my parents. They're like, it doesn't matter what they think. What matters is what you think. And so not having to um look for others' approval and how I did what I needed to do, but I always figured it out. And that's how I was able to get things done.
You spend a lot of time, Michelle, on that point, talking to young people, adults, about building confidence and being confident in who you are. What are some skills and approaches that you recommend for young people or adults who are struggling with confidence in whatever it is they're doing to gain more confidence?
Yeah, I always say confidence starts with you. My definition of confidence, when I read the definition, I like to sum it up as you trusting you to show up for you, right? Because it says, I think, if I'm trying to remember correctly off the top of my head, is something about having a trust in an individual or a thing. Like, so if you want to have confidence in yourself, that means you have to have trust with yourself. And a lot of times we'll break our trust with ourselves and keep our trust with other people. But when you start to build that trust with yourself, meaning when you show up for yourself, you take care of yourself. If you tell yourself you're going to be on time, you show up on time. If you said you're going to be kinder to yourself or speak more positive to yourself and you actually follow through with that, you're building that rapport with yourself that you know how to take care of you. And then also with that definition of confidence is really understanding your strength and your weaknesses. Like confidence doesn't mean that you ignore your weaknesses and you don't have any weaknesses. Is knowing where your strengths and weaknesses are, and when you have a weakness that shows up, you know how to go get help for that because you know that's a weakness. And having that and knowing that and doing that, and that's what brings out the confidence because now I trust my ability to know what I can and cannot do and know when to ask for help.
Well, there's something to that, Michelle, because they do, time and time again, you hear from elite performers like yourself, highly successful people like you, that the most successful people who achieve the most don't. It's not that they don't have weaknesses; they're actually really skilled at identifying their weaknesses and
Yeah.
closing those gaps.
Yes. Yes, because like what they say, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if I have a weak link and I want this link to be strong because I want to be strong all the way around, and that's not me, that means I have to get somebody to fill in that gap for me. And that's when you realize like we cannot do life on our own. We have to do life with each other. You need someone to help you at some point in your life. But as long as you're out there trying to do it all by yourself and not depending on anybody or not depending on or asking for help, you're going to struggle and your weaknesses are always going to show up. Um, and then that it takes a hit at your confidence.
So let's talk about some of the people around you. You mentioned before your father is your coach, is
Yeah.
your shot put coach. That's interesting. The father daughter elite coach athlete relationship. I'm sure it doesn't work for everybody, but for you guys, it
Yeah.
sure has been successful. Your dad is an elite. Has had a career as an elite athlete as well, an Olympic medalist, 3-time Pro Bowler.
Yes.
He's the only person in history to win the Super Bowl and an Olympic medal in the same year. Talk about your relationship with Coach Daddy, as I know you refer to him.
Yes, that is exactly what I call them. We have a great relationship. I remember in the early days we bumped heads a lot because that's my dad. I'm his daughter. and he was a male athlete growing up. So some things that I would do, he was like, well, that's not necessary, right? Like, you don't have to look cute to compete, but I do. Like, I want to look cute. So we bumped heads, but over time I realized what all my dad wanted for me was for me to be my best and to reach my full potential. And then there was a time when I could see myself the way that he saw myself. He saw me being this great athlete and throwing really far, and I wasn't there yet. So having him around as a coach helped stretch my mind of what was possible. So then when I was able to hit these certain marks, and I'm realizing, okay, like, he's not lying to me, right? Because you feel like sometimes your parents have to tell you you cute because you're their child. But he was telling me that because he really saw that in me, and he wasn't just telling me that to make me feel good, but he meant it. And so when I started to believe that for myself and started to see my own potential, and then he started to see that I was willing to work hard for it without him trying to make me work hard for it, that's when our relationship really grew, because he didn't have to make me. I wanted to do it. And it wasn't like this push pull. It's like, okay, now we can walk together.
So now you're walking together. Now, are you guys like one brain? Are you in full unison every day with what needs to be
No,
accomplished?
not at all. We still have our moments, right? We still have our moments, but if we're if he's wanting to do something and I'm seeing it somewhere different, we'll just kind of pause and talk about it. And if whoever kind of wins the argument, that's who we go with. Or sometimes we might come in the middle. He may see it my way, and I can see it his way. And we're like, well, can we do a mixture of both? Because it makes sense on both ends. But if you do it like this, we both kind of get what we want out the situation, depending on what it is. But then there's times where I do have to just solely do what he tells me to do as a coach and depend on his word. But we have our moments, but we try to make it work because I know that he wants what's good for me.
He wants what's good for you. So I'm curious, like, so what happens when you're, so do you kind of compartmentalize the time? There's time when we're father-daughter and there's time when we're coach and athlete, or is it 24/7 figuring out how you guys can get better and how you're going to win another gold?
Well, to me, it's all in the same, because I've been doing shot put for so long. It's part of our relationship, right? But it doesn't taint the relationship, because at the same time, we both know, like, okay, we only can take so much throwing. We're not a family that's going to talk about throwing and training 24/7. We take care of our training, and when it's time to do other things, we do other things. And and so we always been able to do that. And so we can have time where we're sitting at the house and watching TV, and then something might trigger him to think about something, and we may start talking about training or throwing. But then if it doesn't, then we don't talk about it.
So Michelle, I want to dig into the training process. So, what's a typical day like for Michelle Carter?
Yeah. So I wake up, right? I wake up and I kind of spend right now, because it's winter time. It's really cold in the morning, so I wait till more in the afternoon to throw when it warms up more. And so I'll go throw like around 1 o'clock in the morning. No, not, I mean 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and
I was like, 1
then
o'clock in the morning. Talk about pulling the tarp.
no, right? No, no, right? I'm tired, so I might get my words mixed up a little bit. But I'll go throw at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm probably there for about 2 hours, and then I'll go home, eat lunch, and then now, since I'm not going to the gym during this time, I have some weights and stuff set up in my garage. So then I will go to the garage, and I'll work out for probably like another 2 to 3 hours, depending on how long it takes me to get through everything. But then outside of that, so any day I could probably train anywhere between 5 to 6 hours a day.
So is any part of that 5 to 6 hours, or is there any part of your training that's video and analytics, or are you looking at form, or are you just, or do you feel the form and you're trying to, through repetition?
All the above. I do watch film. I don't have to sit there and watch hours and hours of film. Like, for me, is maybe just watching 5 to 10 minutes, because I'm looking for something particular that I'm wanting to improve on, or I want to compare, or I want to look at. So I don't have to spend a lot of time at this point in my career studying film as much, but really just trying to hit the positions that I want to do, like really fine tuning. So for me, it's really more about the repetitions to a certain extent, to just really fine tune and smooth out my technique as much as possible.
So how does it work? So do you say for the in the next 2 hours, I'm not going to leave here until I throw 100 times, or I'm going to throw it until I accomplish something specific that I've set out for myself? How does that work?
So because throwing is not a natural movement. And so a lot of times once you get tired, it's harder to really hold the positions and make sure your form is correct. So I have a number. I get my dad gives me my workout, so I know how many throws of each exercise I have. And so the ideal for me, how I approach it, is I need to maximize the number of throws that I have. So if I have to go to practice and I have 40 throws, I need to make every throw count. And so I don't just throw for the sake of throwing. I'm intentional about each and every throw, trying to make sure I get better and better on each throw. So especially at this stage of my career, I am I'm 35. So having those long practices, I don't really have those practices as much. So I really try to use my time wisely, work smarter, not harder. In the situation, and really just be intentional about each and every practice.
That the work harder, not or the work smarter, not harder, is a topic that comes up on this show a lot, right? Whether we're talking to a CEO, an
Hmm.
Olympian, a coach, the concept of getting the most out of every repetition or the most out of every interaction. If you're in business, it's you'd rather have four good meetings in a day
Yeah.
than 10 meetings that are lousy, right? Or so average.
Hmm.
And there's something there to it. How do you know when things are working the way you want them to be working? Do you just feel it, or how do you know?
I feel it. I feel it, and even if I don't feel it, my dad will let me know if it looks better. Because sometimes you just have those days where your body is just off and you feel like everything you do looks a mess. But then he'll tell me like, no, like you're getting better. You may not feel it, but it is looking better. You're getting better. And so I kind of rely on that feedback as well, to let me know if I'm going in the right direction. Now there are times where in training where we may have to push the numbers to get over the hump, because you get to a hump where you feel like you're trying all the things you normally would do, but you're like at this plateau. And so we may have to switch up a couple of things. We might either just add a few more throws and just kind of thug it out for a little bit, or for me, I may just change the weight of my implement, to kind of change the speed at which I'm working, to see if we can like change up some things so I can feel something a little different and then come back to what we're doing. So it just kind of varies depending on what stage of my season I'm in.
So sometimes you need to feel uncomfortable or feel an extra challenge to take that next step.
Yes, because it really, a lot of my movements come down to like a quarter of a second, right? And how hard it is to decide when's the quarter of a second and when this needs to happen. But doing different things kind of will put you in a different situation so that you can feel something a little different, than what you'll normally feel, because it's the exact thing you need to feel, if that makes sense. I
That
hope I
does
said
make that
that.
does make
Okay.
that does make sense. Michelle, there's so much more to you and the work that you do besides the shot put, and I want to get into some of that. You alluded earlier to the fact that it's not 24/7 throwing. You're not
Yeah.
talking about throwing 24/7. There's so much more that your family enjoys, that you enjoy. There's so many more passions that you have. I know there's lots of interests of Michelle Carter. There's
Yeah.
singing, baking, fashion, the makeup, the makeup entrepreneur, and,
Yeah.
and 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 work that you do. They call you the Shot Diva. When did the
Yes.
Shot Diva come to be?
Well, I mean, she's always been there, but she got her name in college.
The
um,
diva's already been there, but you got the name in college.
yes, because I was always into. I really did believe in looking good, feeling good, doing good, and I was so into makeup and hair and fashion as a child. I just naturally carried it over to track and field. So the minute I can get my nails done, like I had to get my nails done before every track meet. When I got old enough to wear makeup, and I started bringing makeup over into the shot put ring, and some people just didn't like it. They thought like she can't be serious, like you can't be cute and throw the shot put. And I'm like, why not? Like why not? I can be good and look good too. And so that's just always been a part of who I am. And a lot of times we feel like we have to sacrifice a part of us to fit into what people think what successful people look like, or let me say successful female athletes should look like, right? And there was always that stigma behind that. And if you were too pretty, that means you wasn't serious. And that's not true. Like I am a woman. I like to look good. How come I can't be taken serious in that realm? And it took a minute for some people to kind of catch on with that. And but then now it's normal now in sports. You can see these female athletes wearing makeup and their nails are done. You see it more often, and it's now more acceptable in the world of sports.
Do you think, Michelle, that all of these extra interests that you have, like now you're also a professional makeup artist, and you have these other interests, do you think it actually helps you as a thrower?
I do, because I'm not just so obsessed with this one thing in life. I have many interests, and it keeps me well rounded, right? It keeps me well rounded, and I'm always learning something that I can learn. I can take over to track and field, right? So when I'm doing makeup, it's an art to that, and you have to place makeup in certain areas if you want to make someone's eyes pop or do this certain things. But when you look at your technique and think about the throw, like if I put myself in this type of position, then I can add more pop to the shot, right? So it's like I could look at and take any lessons from different parts of my life and apply it to track and field, and take lessons learned in track and field and apply it to other areas of my life.
That is really interesting. I hadn't thought of that. I mean, it's so often that you do see ways to take things you learn in sport and bring them to business. But the example you gave there about the work in the makeup, the professional makeup artist work that you do, and how you utilize that thinking to help you with the throwing. Michelle, before we wrap up, we've got to talk about some of the work that you're doing outside of track and field. It is fantastic work in the community in particular. Talk about some of the nonprofit work that you're doing right now. It's really, really outstanding.
Yeah, so my nonprofit is called One Golden Shot. One Golden Shot. You can find it at onegoldenshot.org. And with my nonprofit, we have three programs because I have a camp called Youth Throw Girls Sports Confidence Camp. And one of the programs within my nonprofit, we raise money to help girls attend the camp, because I actually get girls come from all over the country to attend my camp. And I understand everyone may not have the means to get there. So I do raise money to help young ladies to rub elbows with myself and other professional athletes and Olympians that I bring on to this camp. Because I really believe in them being able to touch and talk to people they aspire to be, so they know that what we do, that they could do that plus more, and that they can actually do it. And then the second program with my nonprofit is called Fuel Up. And this is where we feed track teams in the Dallas Fort Worth area, because I used to go to track teams and track meets, and I'll see these kids outside for 6 to 8 hours, and they have no snacks, no food. They'll get that one meal on their way home, but they're out there for hours and they haven't eaten, and they're expected to perform at their best. So I definitely wanted to help some schools who may not have the money or the means to make sure these kids are fed so they can perform at their greatest. And then our third program is called I'm Supported, and that's where we're raising money to provide young female athletes with sports bras, like proper sports bras. I've gone to several competitions, not just in track and field, but other sports, basketball, volleyball, where young girls do not have the proper sports bras. And you can tell that it's bothering them. They can't fully perform the way they need to perform because they're worried about like what's moving on their chest. And so I know that that's going to be um, definitely a huge confidence booster for them to have the proper sports bras.
Well, Michelle, as you and I have talked about, the everybody pulls the tarp mantra is that you achieve more success, more happiness when you contribute in unexpected ways. everything that you do, Michelle. You're going above and beyond the call of duty and the expectations. We are all rooting for you to continue your successful shot put career, and know that you're going to continue the great work that you're doing outside of throwing to help so many. So, Michelle, thank you for spending a little bit of time this week on Everybody Pulls the Tarp.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. See you soon, Michelle.
All right, bye.